Children by age 12 can identify about 200 brand logos and at the same time maybe about 5 species of trees.
The entire concept of making laddus mostly in winters and not in summers. Nature itself is telling you that what you should consume is this during this time.
In acknowledging that, you see what shapes society, and so much of society is formatively in the hands of non-human beings. When we walk on a beach, we don't know it's doing this completely invisible thing of making the place livable.
There are so many recipes actually died because people didn't sort of pass on the knowledge or share. We, as people who are interested in heritage, assuming everybody is, we then collect those informations, right? So it's a pass on, it's like a passing of the torch thing.
Heritage, I feel here, is not just inheriting and preserving something, but it's also reimagining.
Feel you just need to nudge people and say, hey, this is heritage as well. And then they start thinking on those lines that, oh, it is actually. See? Clap is needed.
Dharani is like, I didn't sign up for this.
Heritage is something that's inherently connected with inheritance, and certain keywords or phrases that one hears in conversations around heritage include passing down across generations, stories and traditions of the past or identities. And more often one assumes that this is a passive process, but in reality there's a lot of active role that generations play when heritage is passed from one generation to the other. So given that this is the scene, what we're going to do now is to talk about it. And right now here we have Yuvan Aves, who is a naturalist, who is an environmental educator and defender, and Sadaf Hussain, a food chronicler, author and a chef. Now we will start with both of your personal lives. What is it that brought you to where you are here, specifically when it comes to your connection with nature and the work that you do, and in your case with food histories and heritage?
I had my mom support me, observe me very deeply when I would follow insects and be curious about trees and sort of feed into that. Hers was a way of parenting which observed the child rather than project one's own aspirations on him or her. And then later on, at 16, I left home and I was living in a campus called Patashala. I was doing my schooling independently and I would take these long walks into the reserve forests and the hills nearby, and the local children would join me. First they would find me amusing, but then later they got deeply interested in the birds, butterflies, snakes, and so on. And I went and asked the headmasters of those schools saying, would you be interested if we did a biodiversity based program in those schools? I said, why don't you come? And then I did these sessions, and children's academic performance, interest in science, just curiosity and motivation to learn started increasing. So I discovered my calling for being a nature educator and why the living world is essential for children's well-being and why children are needed for the living world too.
And food is something which is quite intimate. I think all of us connect with food at least 3 or 4 times a day. So in that sense, connecting that with the past generations, how relevant?
I think all of us have an opinion about food for sure. First thing, how I got interested into food, and is as a kid, almost all of us, if not all, have something to be, some dreams to be, right? Few want to be an engineer, others would like to be a doctor, etc., etc. I wanted to be the fattest kid on earth. Genuine thing. Kids do such interesting, curious things in life. So I would eat a lot. I genuinely would eat a lot. So when you're eating, right, you want to know what you're eating, and then becomes like how you're eating, how these things are cooked, procured, etc., etc. So I think that's what made me take a lot more interest in food. eating and then thereby food cooking as well. Um, then comes the entire thing about food writing and exploring the history or historical significance of the food. That started post my MasterChef stint, and this was 2018, I believe. And I was sitting one day, I was cooking in the kitchen. I realized that people in general cook food, good, bad, or different thing, but they can cook food. But not everybody can write. And I thought maybe it's my duty as a chef. Also, because as a chef, not many chefs actually write. And that's when I started taking interest in food conversations, and then I realized food history is something. I The whole thing, in all honesty, was to make people fall in love with food the way I am.
So, in terms of relevance or significance of something like this, be it with respect to food histories and or culinary heritage, or something like natural heritage, how would you place it in the current context of today?
First, I feel like, sorry, I just want you should go.
Okay. That's a that's a terribly politically nice thing to do, but okay, yeah.
Politically nice thing.
Okay. Um, when we are looking at natural heritage, we are trying to understand how vivid the landscape, waterscape, and the rest of nature. I say rest because I'm not excluding the human from it. Uh, how vivid is that in our collective imagination? Now, there's an interesting paper by this American psychologist, Alan Canna, who did a very vast study across schools and found that children by age 12 can identify about 200 brand logos and at the same time maybe about 5 species of trees. Yeah. What does that do? Because what you can notice is what you vividly perceive in your reality, and what you don't is largely invisible. And you look at, for instance, the ethics of urban planning, how we've inherited it from a colonial sort of blueprint.
Right.
You look at any Indian city, where do you put your red category industries, your thermal power stations, petrochemical industries, fertilizer industries? You don't put them where they perhaps are best to be put. You put them where people have less political, financial, other forms of power, or don't have a say. And so, industrialization as such is a form of oppression which has two forks into nature and onto social justice issues. And that is a kind of heritage which is right now, you know, we need to question. And so heritage, I feel, here is not just inheriting and preserving something, but it's also reimagining. It's also evolving and creating cross-pollinatory connections.
And when we are talking about what we've gotten from the past and the element of preservation and reimagining, that comes to the next question of recipes, right? So that's something which has a lot of emotional connection, but then you also add a little bit of innovation, so that way there's a part of you in it. So that in that sense, how do we define the significance? Food definitely significant, but food as heritage, culinary heritage.
I have this thing of saying that Zaban, Tamiz, Tehzeeb and Khana badalti hai, which is Zaban is your language, Tamiz is etiquettes, Tehzeeb is again your nature, culture, food, right? All these four things are always ever evolving, based on the time and space. Now, then how do you preserve any of these things? With food specifically, I feel like there are two things. Of course, one is the way it used to be cooked, which is the way that, as close as your own example, your grandmother, your grandfather, whoever cooked the food, right? Them cooking versus not necessarily replicating that food, but using an ingredient of that time and then coming up with something which is modern, right? So, for example, the wood that they used, right? Different kinds of wood that they were using. for like a different kind of smokiness. It could adding a sweet smoke will have a sweet wood, more charred wood, etc., etc. So, can you do all that? Maybe not. Can you get the similar kind of spices? Maybe not. But maybe the one main ingredient, or the hero ingredient, I think that's at least, and I feel like for me, it's a worth the fight.
Yes. So when it comes to culinary heritage or natural heritage, all of these can be encompassed under intangible heritages, because these are things that people go through and they experience, and like both of you said, they keep changing. So if you could tell us a little about significant or relevant, not relevant, but if you could tell us about significant natural sites which are present in the country that are important for, I don't want to distinguish between humans and nature, but which are important. Let me just stop it right there.
More than any place, perhaps in India, with the exception of Rajasthan, Tamil has so many words to describe water. Starting from the Yeri system and the Kulam, Kuttam, Kundam, Poigai, Sengai, for every kind of ecology, for every sort of nuance, the way hydrology can manifest itself, it is there. You cannot traverse 3 to 5 kilometers in a place in Tamil Nadu without hitting a place name which evokes vegetation or hydrology. As such, the sad thing about natural heritage is the genesis of things are forgotten. For instance, cities are always born around hydrology, and then slowly, as it builds, and one forgets, there is a collective amnesia of what allows life to exist. Then it sort of breaks its own back. For instance, the industrialization of Chennai as such is on the Kosastalayar basin, which actually births Chennai, allows it, to be there in the first place. Those are some of the way, and then there are so many from other. Look at the Idu Mishmi. There is such a embodied way of speaking which invokes sacrality. In the Mishmi way of seeing, there's no distinguishing between living and non-living. Everything is living, but alive in a different way. Tree, rock, house fire, everything is alive, but alive differently. That's an extraordinary way of perceiving, which is very difficult, for instance, for an urban dweller to even sort of cognitively understand.
Beautiful. So then, in that sense, if you're looking at culinary traditions, could you shed light on some of the lesser known culinary traditions of the country or the subcontinent, which you think would be interesting for someone to know about or learn from?
And culinary heritage, I suppose, starts from, I mean, very basic is from your own family. The entire concept of making laddus, mostly in winters and not in summers, right? Of course, because almost all the laddus across the country uses a lot of ghee, jaggery, and everything. Now, two reasons for laddus essentially, because jaggery comes during winters mostly, and ghee keeps your body warm. And then mostly the laddus that you make, different kinds of laddus that you make during winters, is to fight against the weather. It's like an immunity booster. Nature itself is telling you that what you should consume is this during this time, right? In Jharkhand, there's something called futkal, or there's rugda. Rugda is mushroom, so it grows in the wild. People will go and forage it, pick it up, and then either sun dry it in that weather, or cook it fresh. It's so good, but city people will not know about it. Why? Because it's not a city people thing. They will know about the regular button mushroom or fancy oyster mushrooms, but not small things, which is much more, in a way, seasonal. Like you wait for, at least for the north, right? You wait for the sarson ka saag in the winters.
And sarson ka saag is?
Mustard.
Oh.
Mustard. You must have seen movies where the Bollywood actors are running in field. That's
Yellow flowers.
yes. So that's mustard season. That's mustard. So you have all that. So it's just seasonality, right? All these are that's something. It's seasonality, and then you can't ignore your nature for that. You can't. And idea is to preserve both the nature and what nature gives you to consume. And these are living heritage. These are not dead heritage, quote unquote, or on coma heritage. These are living heritage that you're living, breathing. Feel you just need to nudge people and say, hey, this is heritage as well. And then they start thinking on those lines that, oh, it is actually. Yeah.
So, in that sense, what role do you think documentation plays when it comes to natural heritage? Especially when I'm asking you this question from the lens of an educator.
One thing children study is, through what we offer them, is you take a street with trees and one without. Whether you acknowledge it or not, human sociopolitics is completely different. Where there are trees, you have the rickshawalas, the ironwala, the flower seller lady, the children playing cricket on the street, the Uber driver who can take rest. And where there are no trees, you don't have that. You might acknowledge it or not, but in acknowledging that, you see what shapes society. And so much of society is so much formatively in the hands of non-human beings. So let's say you can name and notice 50 species of trees here. Your world is changed. It's far more magical.
You notice things better,
Yes,
clearer,
exactly.
your world is open.
Yes, and there's so many more entities which are agent in your worldview. So when we were doing this, documentation, what we found was that there are, lots of, bivalves, gastropods, crustaceans you find on the coast, and as generations, the elders would have specific names for each. Among the people who are, in their 30s and 40s, and their culture is eroding and is really pushed to the margins by, urbanism, they have only generic names. They have, like, so for all shells, they will say either Kilinjal. So what we did was we got the specific names, made material with books and field guides, gave it back to the children. Now they're able to speak that. It's both a re-invocation as well as a reimagination. That's basically it. Then there's another way of speaking, another way of sort of counter documentation to this. For instance, if you look at how we speak, which deanimates, we refer to living human beings with lives and histories and sufferings as labor, deanimation. We call land and water sometimes as capital, the economic language. We can refer to huge ecologies and communities of fish and other species as stock. So there is a kind of a process of seeing which and speaking which erases this from our perception, therefore erases this form of uh, you know collective imaginal documentation which one needs to be wary of.
To make these concepts or ideas more ecocentric.
Not eco. So what I would say is more alive. A friend of mine, Siddharth Pandey, did his work on what magic is, and he looks at what is the human common imagination of magic across cultures, either way Ramayana, Mahabharata, or the Harry Potter and the Lord of the Rings and everything. There's only one common thing, is that everything is alive, everything is speaking. Usually in the non-magical world, there are things which are not ascribed animacy to. The wand is alive in the Harry Potter, or you take the Mahabharata, the forests
Animals
have yes,
are
animals
characters.
have
You have
character.
trees in Lord of the Rings.
Yes, the ends in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Our lived world is such a magical space. There is agency. So it's a matter of perception and direct engagement.
So when the youth now in the contemporary setting needs to engage with these concepts, ideas, be it in terms of dialogues or be it in terms of actions, what are some of the ways do you think they can do it, be it in your space or your spaces?
The next step of the same would be to understand the food. And I think it's all our collective responsibility in a way to give that information, that what is this food about? Like, for example, when we think about sugar, which is such a common thing, or tea, which is such a common thing for India, what is the structure? What is the history of sugar? it's interesting that India gave sugar to the world, right? We are the people who we are to be blamed for diabetes in the world. So how it happened, how then chini, how we started calling it chini, from how shakkar gave the word to sugar, how khand gave a word to candy, right? And how sugar then traveled all the way to Egypt to come back to India as misri, right? The crystal sugar, and we call it, oh, that's the good way of having sugar, right? So all this is important for people to understand. So level one, just see the photographs, take the document as whatever way you can, but then one step ahead is to sort of dig in deep and start finding the relevance, start finding the what you're talking about, the names of cities, right? There are dishes which are named after the pots and pan, like a kulfi. Kulfi is a dish we all know, we all have eaten, but it's not a name of a dish per se. It's now a dish. But kulfi means mold, right? That's about it. So all that, right? To understand, that's the level I'm talking about. That's something about going one step ahead in documentation what you eat. Is it necessary for everyone to do? I don't know. It's good to do, yes. That's when you live that heritage. That's what you live, that culinary background in a way, right?
And with respect to the youth in the current context, so how would the engagement?
Youth, I don't know who you're calling youth. Like, are we youth?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh,
I
okay,
am.
okay, fine. Okay.
I
Okay,
don't know about
young
you.
people. Okay. Uh, we have three pillars to it. One is all forms of learning involves direct engagement. Okay, you're understanding issues with respect to water pollution. We go and speak with people living on the banks of the Adayar, what they are facing. So one is building a connection, face to face, face to place, and then all kinds of learning has local relevance because the local is the arena of action. Yeah. And then interconnectedness is from a sort of neuroscience perspective as well as a very practical perspective. When you unsilo the ecological, social and political, the learning becomes powerful and relevant. It becomes far more meaningful. Pure cognitive knowledge does not cut it, you know does not build connection. For instance, if a lake is being paved over, or a tree is being cut, or somebody's a drunk man is beating the wife on the road, will you do something? Is that a statistic? Is that just something you notice, or are you moved to action because you see your extraordinary interrelatedness with things? That interrelatedness comes with direct engagement. Youth, I think, must find their fundamental interrelatedness with other people, other species, their landscapes, waterscapes, build connections, engage directly. And there are so many ways of doing it.
If I if I may add on that, because with the food aspect, that's uh, and I will expand the youth part. I will not limit it to only youth. Because I feel like,
Anybody,
yeah, when they
yes.
say heritage, and I
Yeah.
think it's all of our responsibility. So when I am doing,
So are you saying you're not youth?
I am youth. Others are not. He is not.
Hey,
You only said I'm not youth.
I didn't say that.
So when you're thinking about from a food perspective, right, from a food lens, I feel the same way that you need to change the way you teach, right? From a just teaching from like top down in a way to a touch and feel, to live in that space,
Tactile,
right? Tactile,
experiential.
correct. So within the food, when I'm doing my food walk or when I'm doing my writing bit, right? It's about that you throw people in that particular space. You make them see, live that time. So then, what you're talking about is giving them the like a whiff of heritage, right? Opening that pot for them to see, okay, this is also our heritage. Then maybe they are going to take that interest, be it food walk, be it any kind of heritage walk, or be it just walk in the nature. When you're not emotionally attached to something, it sort of then you'll not really believe in it. So with food walk,
You
that's
have
what I
no
would do.
stake.
You don't have exactly. You have no stake, apart from the steak that you're eating, but you don't have any other stake. So I feel like that's a new way of teaching people.
So for that, in most cases, it's disseminated by experts or people who know about these things or already have an awareness. They are aware of what are the consequences of not being aware of such things. But what about non-experts? Say for someone, say maybe okay, you're a naturalist, you're a food chronicler, you're a chef. So I might probably define myself as a nature lover, food lover slash human. So in that sense, what is it that I can do, given that I probably am not an expert as both of you are?
But you're living that same in that same nature, in eating the same food.
You didn't include humans in our introduction. You called yourself human.
We're not humans.
You didn't.
We're not human
Okay.
enough.
Fellow
Okay.
humans.
Okay.
Fellow humans. But you're living that time, era, nature, food, eating, everything, right? And that's your authority. You share your experience through social media. Social media is a great platform these days. You document. The reason I'm saying share it on social media so that everyone can use it, right? A knowledge should not be confined in your four walls. There are so many recipes actually died because people didn't sort of pass on the knowledge or share. They were like, "This is my thing." Also, being also in a way very insecure about their art. That if I pass on the information to somebody else, my job is over, right? So the AI taking over job is not a new thing. It's always been there. It was then AI was called alternate individual, right? Somebody else will
Oh,
take your food away, or the ways of cooking food. I know I can give philosophical
Okay. Okay.
information at times.
Can you cite that?
Sadaf Hussain Sadaf, Hussain Sadaf day to day.
Okay. Fine.
So that's the thing, that you don't need to be insecure about it. It's just passing on information, because if you don't, then nobody will get to know about it. Like the trees you're talking about, if I know about it, I will talk about 50,000 other people. That's when they get to know. But if I am not talking about it, if I'm not getting the information from you, what am I passing on to people? And hence, that's what your authority is. That's all of our authorities. Preserving the heritage is not just, I think, one human's role. It's a space environment that we all have to cultivate in a way.
The point Sadaf is making about social media is an interesting one, which sort of underlines the fact that as fellow humans, we constantly inhabit socio-political spaces. So, our meaningfulness and purposefulness that we feel comes from uh, what we deem as community. So there are, people. So I think it's a difficult question you're asking. Where you have access to experts. I think there are knowledge holders are valuable, and as well as communities of knowledge making are also important. And as a single human being, I don't think you can do, or rather, one does not exist in isolation. I think to be is to be related. Yeah.
and in terms of holders of knowledge, um, who would you say are custodians of natural heritage or culinary heritage?
Because see, the knowledge about a particular food, habit, culture, festivities, right? Festival, everything, is sure limited. It's very like a local, right, or hyper local, you can say. So they would know about it. So sure, they are the custodians of their own community, because I think it's their story. So they are the best people to narrate it. But we, as people who are interested in heritage, assuming everybody is, we then collect those informations, right? So it's a pass on. It's like a passing of the torch thing.
I think knowledge is a deeply interspecies property. As in a culinary context, I would think of the mustard or the coconut tree also as a knowledge holder, and the ways of thinking and usage it allows for and evolves into. Um, right now, I'm thinking about as I sort of look at and read all religions, so I don't have any specific religious, preference as such. But I'm just thinking about the Avadhuta Gita, where Dattatreya says, "Who are your, somebody, a visitor asks him, who are your teachers?" And he says, "Spider, python, tree, this thing, and so on." And he names about 20 creatures, and he speaks about what spiritually he learned from them as such. Which is to say that, can we look at knowledge systems as interspecies, interbeing property, and the making of knowledge coming out of how we relate with each other. For instance, this conversation where we have a culinary expert, and you and I, sitting and speaking, and it's a new conversation coming out of the specific set of relatednesses this is allowing for, uh, which is to say that I'm just saying intraconnectedness, relatedness is, and patterns of that are the custodians of knowledges rather than entities by themselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really curious about how you do and plan your heritage walks and what's the experience you curate for people and what that leaves them with.
I feel like as somebody who understands Old Delhi, where I do most of the food walks, or other places where I do food walk, I feel like I understand the space, I understand the lanes, right? And I like to call it flirt with your city. It's important to flirt with your city, right? That's when you, in a way, also fall in love with your city. And then the food of different times, that how different time, different space, different rulers, in a way, transformed the food that we eat right now. When you're done with the walk, then you're thinking of a different era. That, oh, in 1900s, people were eating that particular food. In 2000, people started eating this food. In 2024 or 23, we are having ice cream dosa, right? So that's the entire thing, that you start thinking. I want you, basically, once you're done with the walk, to be very, very curious. When you go back home, either you connect to me or you start exploring things online, read up, watch videos, whatever. It's just this curiosity, that plug, basically, that you just put that plug in. That's, I think that's my role. How do you make your students aware of environment?
We do a lot of walking, and I'm interested, primarily in your curation of walking also, because it's slow movement. You become disarmed and susceptible to things which you do not meet when you move fast through an automobile or whatever. A few days ago, I did a shore walk for a bunch of interns, and the idea is that often we perceive city beaches as barren spaces, and something I like to say often is that barrenness is always a state of mind, never a state of land. And to understand, for instance, a beach is important because it is a bioshield for against sea ingress. And so the places where they've eroded, it has come, in North Chennai, 12 to 15 kilometers underneath, vanquished all groundwater. When we walk on a beach, we don't know it's doing this completely invisible thing of uh, making the place livable. It is buffering, tidal waves, cyclones, and these are things which require vaster forms of perception to value, and in a very embodied sense. And for that, I think, like he was saying, walking is a powerful way, is perhaps the only way to as a learning process and knowledge making.
For direct engagement.
Yes, direct engagement. Yeah. All this can be, let's say you read in a textbook where only cognition is working, where cognition is such a small part of the brain and the body, doesn't work. You need all your senses, your emotions.
And if I'm flipping the question to you and asking you a culinary related question based on your experiences, would you be able to give us like an example or an experience?
Recently I was speaking with a Raika researcher in Jaipur, and she was speaking about how the Raika people have such you make sure they feed their camels with, I think, 25, 30 different kinds of shrubs and bushes so that they are healthy and the milk is healthy too. And in some sense, a lot of indigenous communities and inhabitant communities embody this thing of diversity in diet. And obviously, you know more about that. And some sense that has a beautiful synonymy of one's own physical health as well as the ecosystem one lives in, the health of that, where you consume diversely versus just two things, which then dictates monoculture. And I think you know destroys both our health and the places we live in. I've read that a lot of the Northeast especially, communities eat something like thousands of different plants, which definitely I don't. I'm repeatedly eating different versions of 4 or 5 kinds. Yeah, I don't know
No,
what you think about that. Yeah.
no, because we talk about Jharkhand as well, and Jharkhand has kinds and kinds of leafy vegetables, right? Um, we know of spinach, the most popular one, or I talk about also. Uh, there's mustard seed, etc. But they have um, jute flower leaves as well to eat, right? They of course have different kinds of. In Maharashtra, for example, you cook in turmeric leaf. It sort of adds on to the flavor, right? Then of course you have the banana leaf as well to sort of cook food in it. So yeah, we are. It's coming back from the nature only. It's coming back from same touch and feel. It's shame because not many people are aware of it, and hence it's in a way almost gone from the society, and it's whichever vegetable meat got good PR, we're able to just consume that. Whoever's PR is not that great, we're just forgetting about all that. It's all about PR and communication, basically. If we need to speak about those kinds of other lesser known, it's like listening to music. Just don't listen to Frank Sinatra, but listen to like.
I don't. Okay.
So
Okay.
I've listened to others people as well. I listen to Frank Sinatra. Or
Okay.
just don't listen to Sonu Nigam and Arijit Singh, but also play
That
some
also
indie
I don't. Okay. Okay. Fine.
indie
Okay. It's
musicians.
okay.
Others who are listening. Somebody is listening to Arijit and Sonu Nigam, but less of indie, right? So listen to indie. You listen to indie
Yeah.
music? Okay, great. So you're the other category.
Yeah.
So, in that sense, when we're talking about heritage, the purpose of talking about it or documenting it is also, in a sense, to see how they can be preserved. Is there something that you have in mind wherein you can think of or choose between what should be preserved over others in the context of your spaces?
Same example. When anybody mention about preservation, I think of pickles. That's it. I love pickle, and I feel like pickling is an example of preserving.
Any specific pickle or generally
Any
pickles?
pickle, meat pickle, veg pickle, leaf pickle, anything. When can you have rice and dal? Simple, yes, sure. Simple food you can have, right? Similarly, can you live in a space? Yes, sure. But pickle adds that flavor, adds that extra like level for like a different kind of a kick in sort of enjoying your meal, right? Also, not just enjoying the meal, but pickle is also supposed to be quite healthy because fermented, right? Fermentation is good for your gut health, etc. So now so not just your gut health, but also mental health because you're getting satisfaction with just addition of little bit of pickle or anything which is preserved. That's what I talk about heritage as well. That can you live in a society without heritage? Sure, but when you get a kick of knowledge about it, when you get a kick about heritage, whether whichever part you were living in, then it just gives you a lot more satisfaction that, oh, I live in a city which was previously called this, or I eat a particular food which previously we used to make it this way or that way. And that's what gives the kick that I'm talking about. So I think heritage is like pickle. It adds flavor to our lives.
My experience of pickle eating has been transformed. Okay. No,
Chuff.
okay. Okay. With respect to natural heritage, what would preservation mean? It would be you preserve what you're connected to, uh, what you are, and so to. I think preservation is a sort of ongoing, deepening expansion of identity, which is vast and inclusive. That's what preservation means, I think, in natural heritage. And it needs to often take the form of resistance, of the great momentum of different things, crushing it, industrialization, land use change, urbanization, climate change, etc. Many of the forms, successful forms, reforms, need to take the form of resistance. Yeah.
So this would be, I think, a nice space to conclude the conversation, to see where, when it comes to heritage or when it comes to Indian heritage, knowledge systems, and when we're talking about cultural or intangible heritage, which is present in a lot of our lives, be it in terms of social norms or practices and habits. This is where you're a custodian, I'm a custodian, and so are you, which is also what we're trying to do in Inherit. We're trying to see what are the avenues that can be created for having a platform wherein we can engage with each other, wherein we can share information about our heritage. And we bring to you in this phase or cycle stories in the form of visual series and podcast series following the themes of natural heritage and culinary heritage. And we really look forward to learning more from you as well.